Sunday, the Foreign Secretary said of their Brexit deal, it mitigates most of the negative impacts. Can the Prime Minister tell us which of the negative impacts it does not mitigate?
Can I first of all, I'm sure that the whole House will wish to pass our condolences as well to the family and friends of Harry Leslie Smith. What we see behind the analysis that we have published today, and indeed the Chancellor recognised this morning, is that our deal is the best deal available for jobs and our economy that allows us to honour the referendum and realise the opportunities of Brexit. This analysis does not show that we'll be poorer in the future than we are today. No, it doesn't. It shows we'll be better off with this deal. What would make us poorer, what would have an impact on our economy for the future, would be the policies of the Right Honourable Gentleman. More borrowing, higher taxes, fewer jobs. The biggest risk to our economy is the Right Honourable Gentleman and his shadow Chancellor.
Mr. Speaker, on the same day that statement was made, the Prime Minister said, "This is the best possible deal, it's the only possible deal." Well, I mean to say, it's not hard to be the best deal if it's the only deal. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, by definition, it's also the worst deal. Mr. Speaker, the Government Economic Service forecasts published today are actually meaningless because there's no actual deal to model, just a 26-page wish list. The Chancellor, however, said that her deal will make people worse off. Does the Prime Minister agree? He doesn't appear to be here this morning to be consulted.
As I've just set out to the Right Honourable Gentleman, what the analysis shows, it does show that this deal that we have negotiated is the best deal for our jobs and our economy, which delivers on the results of the referendum for the British people. And I believe that we should be delivering on the result of the referendum. But he talks about the political declaration. He calls it a wish list. Now, what he's describing is a political declaration that's been agreed between the United Kingdom and the European Union that sets out an ambitious, broad, deep and flexible partnership across trade and economic cooperation, law enforcement and criminal justice, foreign policy, security and defence, and wider areas of cooperation. And what does Labour have to offer? 6 bullet points. My weekend shopping list is longer than that.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of making our economy weaker through austerity, their botched Brexit threatens more of the same. Professor Alston said in his damning UN report into UK poverty, and I quote, "In my meetings with the government, it was clear to me that the impact of Brexit on people in poverty is an afterthought." In her Chequers plan, the Prime Minister promised frictionless trade with Europe after Brexit. Her future partnership guarantees no such thing. Does the Prime Minister understand why MPs are queuing up not to back her plan?
I can tell the Right Honourable Gentleman who is backing my plan. Farmers in Wales, fishermen in Scotland, employers in Northern Ireland. When MPs come to look at this vote, they will need to look at the importance of us delivering on Brexit and ensuring that we deliver Brexit and doing it in a way that protects jobs. And on that subject, he referenced what had happened to the economy over the last 8 years. We've seen the number of young people not in education, employment or training at record lows. We see borrowing this year at its lowest level for 13 years. We see more people in work than ever before, the fastest regular wage growth for nearly a decade, and today we've seen the number of children living in workless households at a record low and the proportion of workless households at a record low. That's good, balanced management of the economy by the Conservatives.
Mr. Speaker, it's good balanced management of the economy. Then why did Professor Alston say there are 14 million people in our country living in poverty? And when she claims support for her deal, last week more than 200 chief executives and entrepreneurs described her Brexit deal as the worst of all worlds.
Order. Mr. Morris, calm yourself. Take some sort of soothing medicament if that is what is required. But above all, calm yourself. Jeremy Corbyn.
And, Mr. Speaker, a private email the CBI sent round says of the deal, no need to give credit to negotiators, I think, because it's not a good deal. All the Prime Minister can commit to is we'll be working for frictionless trade. She's gone from guaranteeing frictionless trade to offering friction and less trade. After these botched negotiations, Mr. Speaker, the country has no faith in the next stage of even more complex negotiations being concluded in just 2 years. So what does the Prime Minister think is preferable? Extending the transition with further vast payments to the European Union, or falling into the backstop with no exit?
Well, as the right honourable gentleman knows, there is an exit from the backstop. There is an alternative to the backstop, but we don't want the backstop to be invoked in the first place. And neither does the government of the Republic of Ireland, and neither does the European Union. But let me just see, he's referring again to this issue of the political declaration and the nature of the political declaration. He will know that the European Union cannot agree and sign legal text on a trade arrangement with a country that is a member of the European Union, so they cannot do that until we have left the European Union. And let me just say this to him. The December joint report was 16 pages long, and it took less than a year to turn it into 599 pages of legal text. The political declaration is 26 pages long. It is perfectly possible to turn that into the legal text within the nearly 2 years it is available. At every stage, people have said we couldn't do what we've done. They said we couldn't get agreement last December, we did. They said we wouldn't get an implementation period, we did. They said we wouldn't agree a withdrawal agreement, a political declaration, we did. It takes hard work and a firm commitment to work in the national interest, and that's what this government has.
Mr. Speaker, that would explain why the Brexit Business Secretary doesn't have much faith in this either. He's already discussing a transition period being extended to 2022, apparently. Parliament voted, Mr. Speaker, Parliament voted for the government to publish its legal advice in full. The government today says it will ignore the sovereign will of Parliament. In 2007, the Prime Minister wrote to the then Prime Minister saying the legal advice for the Iraq War should have been published in full to Cabinet and MPs. So why doesn't the Prime Minister practice what she preached?
Say to the right honourable gentleman, of course, there's a legitimate desire in Parliament to understand the legal implications of the deal. We have said, and we have been clear, that we will make available to members a full reasoned position statement laying out the government's legal position on the withdrawal agreement, and the Attorney-General is willing to assist Parliament by making an oral statement and answering questions from members. But as regards publication of the full legal advice, the advice any client receives from their lawyer is privileged. That's the same for government as it is for any member of the public.
Well, the Chancellor said what we're not going to do is publish the raw legal advice from the Attorney-General. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister herself wanted legal advice in the past. MPs need to see that advice, warts and all, so they can make their informed decision of this matter. The Prime Minister insists that her government will be able to negotiate every aspect of the UK's future trade relationship with Europe within the space of 2 years. We've had 2.5 years since the referendum. So far, 20 of our own ministers have resigned. This is the most shambolic government in living memory. And And she is now asking Parliament to vote on the basis of a 26-page wish list without even seeing the full legal advice. It's now clear that Parliament will not back this plan. So isn't it time for her to accept that reality and make way for an alternative plan that can work for the whole country?
Let me say to the Right Honourable Gentleman, I will take no lectures from the Right Honourable Gentleman, who has seen 100 resignations from his But I will also say this. Today we saw what really lies behind Labour's approach. Last night, the Shadow Chancellor told an audience in London that he wanted to seize upon a second referendum and vote Remain. So now we have it. They want to cause chaos, frustrate Brexit, overturn the will of the British people, and that would be a betrayal of the many by the few.
John Lamont, Mr. Lamont.
Mr. Speaker, a Small Business Saturday takes place this week. It's a great campaign which encourages us all to support local shops and businesses across our land. In Scotland, there are over 340,000 small and medium-sized businesses supporting 1.2 million jobs. So will the Prime Minister join me in congratulating the Federation of Small Business and all the small businesses who take part in this event, but particularly Lindsay Grieve, the butcher in Hoyt, Stems, the florist in Jedburgh, and Archie Humes, the gentleman's outfitters in Kelso.
Can I thank my honourable friend for raising what I think we should all accept across this House is an excellent campaign, and I look forward, when I'm in his neck of the woods, perhaps being able to visit some of the excellent shops that he has just quoted. It is important that we help small businesses, and that's why we're taking over 655,000 small businesses out of paying any business rates at all. And we want to change the system so that rates follow the lower level of inflation. That means a saving every year and worth over 5 billion to businesses over the next 5 years. And we're providing 900 million to cut eligible small retailers' bills by 1/3 for 2 years. So I congratulate Lindsay, Grieve, Stems the Florist and Archie Hume. I look forward possibly to visiting them, and I'm sure that many members of this House will be recognising the importance of small businesses on Small Business Saturday and championing the excellent contribution they make to our economy.
Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I take the opportunity to wish everyone in the House a happy St Andrew's Day when it comes on Friday? Mr. Speaker, today the Chancellor said that the Prime Minister's Brexit deal will leave the economy slightly smaller, and in pure economic terms there will be a loss. Now, we now know that this has been confirmed by the government's own analysis that real wages will fall. Does the Prime Minister agree her deal will leave people poorer than the status quo?
The analysis shows no. What the analysis does not show that we will be poorer than the status quo today. What it shows, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. What the analysis shows is that this is a strong economy which will continue to grow, and that the model which actually delivers best on delivering for the vote of the British people and for our jobs and our economy is the model that the government has put forward, is the deal that the government is proposing.
Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do wonder if the Prime Minister has read her own analysis, because quite clearly, under any scenario, leaving the single market and the customs union will be poorer. The Prime Minister wants to take us back to the days of Thatcher and a belief that unemployment is a price worth paying. That's the reality. No government, Mr. Speaker, should choose to weaken its economy and make its citizens poorer. That's what the Prime Minister is doing. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister will travel to Scotland today. People in Scotland voted overwhelmingly to remain. We voted for our rights to be respected.
Order. Now, the Right Honourable Gentleman is entitled to be heard, and he will be heard as every other member of this House will be heard. It's a simple point. Please digest it. Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister will travel to Scotland today. People in Scotland voted overwhelmingly to remain. We voted for our rights to be respected, and we are not prepared to give up those rights. The Prime Minister must explain to the people of Scotland why her deal will rob them of their rights as EU citizens.
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, he started his remarks by comments about unemployment and the government's approach to unemployment. What do we see under this government? 3.3 million jobs have been created since the Conservatives came into power. And the OBR forecasting a further 800,000 more jobs being created in our economy. Employment rate is a near record high. Employment is at a record high. Unemployment rate has almost halved since 2010. And he talks about what the people of Scotland voted for. They voted to stay in the United Kingdom, and they voted for 13 Conservative MPs.
Anne-Marie Trevelyan.
It's a fact with any divorce proceedings that if the parties cannot reach a fair and equitable agreement, they go to a judge to ask for a decision. Mr. Speaker, in the case of the divorce between the UK and the EU, this Parliament must be the judge. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that once this Parliament has rejected the EU's controlling and dominating proposal, which won't leave us free to decide our future, that the UK will be better off actually spending the money we set aside to prepare for a clean global Brexit?
Can I say to my honourable friend that
Order. The honourable lady's question was heard, and I will hear the Prime Minister's reply, and the Prime Minister is entitled to have that reply properly heard. The Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Backing this Brexit deal means that we will control our own borders, we'll end free movement once and for all, we'll protect jobs with a deal that's good for our economy, we'll no longer send vast sums of money every year to the European Union, we can spend it on our priorities, and we'll be able to strike free trade deals around the world, as well as taking back control of our laws and having a good security partnership. But if we reject this deal, we go back to square one, with damaging uncertainty that would threaten jobs, threaten our investment and the economy, and lead to more division. I mean, there was less time to focus on the issues that our constituents wish us to focus on. So I think the choice is backing the deal in the national interest so we can build that brighter future, or going back to square one if it is rejected.
Tracy Brabin.
Thank you.